I would like to begin tonight's Chaburah with giving a gross yashikoyach to Reb Zevi for a moiridig zman. Baruch Hashem, we reflect back a gavaldig zman, hilchas kibbut avein, shkoyach for arranging guest speakers, the Eibus will help him weiter. Just on the note of Bachram, I want also, he said about a shout out, I want to say I'm grateful that my son, he started in Abein Azmanim today, so he joined the Chaburah as well. This year, I don't know if the Olam remembers, so much happened, we went through a war, Nisim, but this year was an interesting year on the calendar, a unique year. Erev Pesach Shechalias B'Shabbos. The Olam remembers, it's not going to happen for another 20 years. There's still some interesting, let's call it halachas, that are being noiveya from the calendar, the setup of Erev Pesach Shechalias B'Shabbos. Dahainu, this week, Shabbos Parshas Matas Maseh to be Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, is something that only happens when Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos. So such a occurrence is not going to happen for another 20 years. And what we're going to discuss tonight is Lagabi the Haftorah. The Haftorah. What'd you say? Oh, very good, very good. Very fine said. The Olam was very busy saying that the next Erev Pesach Shabbos is in 20 years. So richtig, people were saying we should be zeicha that it should be sooner than 20 years. If Mekadosh al Pi Ariyah, it could happen next year, Avada. Which Haftorah do we lay in this Shabbos? Parshas Matas Maseh Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. So what's the Shaila? Let's break it down. Let's start from the beginning. Haftorahs in general, though it's Dina da Hashas, the Gemara already brings about Haftorahs, most of the Haftorahs that we lay, that we say, are not in the Gemara. It's minhagim. As a matter of fact, you look, minik the Svardim, they start earlier, they say later, some even have a different Haftorah, a lot of different minhagim and Haftorahs. Very few Haftorahs are in the Gemara. One of the few is Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. The Gemara says, when it's Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, the Haftorah that we lay in Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, when you lay in Parshas HaShavua under the second Sefer Torah, the Parshas of Rosh Chodesh, Zok the Gemara, you read the Haftorah of V'hoyi Midei Chodesh B'Chatzai. It starts Hashemayim Kisi. The Gemara calls it the end of the Haftorah V'hoyi Midei Chodesh B'Chatzai. As Rabbi Menoich explains, every Haftorah that we lay in is connected to the Parsha. When there was the Gzeira that we couldn't have Kriyas HaTorah, we lay in the Haftorah that was connected, reminded us of the Parsha. And Rosh Chodesh, what's the connection of Haftorah to the Kriyas HaTorah of Rosh Chodesh? V'hoyi Midei Chodesh B'Chatzai Rosh Chodesh. So really, Be'etzem, Al Pi Dina da Hashas, this Shabbos Parshas Matas Maseh, that's Rosh Chodesh. What Haftorah should you lay? The Rosh Chodesh, Hashemayim Kisi, very simple. However, not a Gemara, but it's a Psikta. Taisus brings a Psikta that even though every week we read what's connected to the Parsha, for the next 10 weeks, the Amos says the next 12 weeks, we don't read what's connected to the Parsha, but now Gibel the Puranius, the 3 weeks, the Haftorah Shabbos of the 3 weeks, we read the Gimel the Puranius, and then the 7 weeks afterwards, Nachmu, for 7 weeks, Shiva the Nechemta, and then 2 weeks of Tshuva. So the Psikta. So really, to lay in this week Parshas HaChodesh is not a stira to the Psikta, because the Psikta is talking about when it's not Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, or to lay in the Gimel the Puranius, which is Shimu, is also not a stira, because the Gemara says you lay in Shabbos Rosh Chodesh on a regular Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. But just like the Haftorah Gimel the Puranius is Oiker, the Parshas HaShavua will be Oiker Rosh Chodesh. So which Haftorah do you lay in the Shabbos? Which Haftorah? Do you lay in the Haftorah of Rosh Chodesh Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, or do you lane the Haftorah of Gimel de Pranusa, which is Shimu, Hashamayim, Kisser Rosh Chodesh, or Gimel de Peranius? What'd you say?
Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Chanukah. You lay Chanukah.
Good. So over here, the reason for that is very good. You're asking Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Chanukah, you lay in Chanukah, very good. Over there, the answer is because you always have Torah b'may the salik minei, where you end off. So I used the 3 Sefer Torah, you take out the last Kriyas Chanukah. Why? Because it's less harder. So Mela Daf Torah is connected, very good. But here, this Shabbos is Shabbos Parshas Matas Masay. That's one Sefer Torah, and the second Sefer Torah is Kriyas Rosh Chodesh. So Mitzad, what's connected to the Kriya would be Rosh Chodesh. However, the Psikta says that these 3 weeks we don't read the Haftorah that's connected to the Parsha or Minyana de Yom, but rather connected to the Kriya, but more rather Minyana de Yom. Yeah. The emes is that really there's a Mefurish Gemara. There's a Mefurish Gemara what you do in such a Shabbos. It's a Mefurish Gemara Megillah. Lamar Aleph Amud Bais, the Gemara says, Rosh Chodesh Av Shechal Liyos B'Shabbos, Zok the Gemara. You know what Haftorah Yalein? Haftorah of Chazoin. It's a Gemara. It's a Gemara. So we're clearing Tut Stadim Rosh Chodesh or Gimel de Peranius. The Gemara says Mefurish Yalein this Shabbos Haftorah's Chazoin. Lamaisa, Tosfos Afanart says, V'anu ein noyegin kain. Even though it's a Gemara Mefureshes to read this Shabbos Chazoin, Zok the Gemara, we're not noyeg like that. Anu ein noyegin kain. Narvas, Chazoin is always the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. Tosfos explains that it's not we're noyeg against the Gemara. The Gemara is going with the Shita that we're noyeg avelis from Rosh Chodesh. But it's only Shavua Shechal Boy, Zok Tosfos. So Mela, that's why the Haftorah's Chazoin is the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. Agav L'Maimer Amuska, this year the Chazoin we're going to lay is not Shavua Shechal, but it's not Shavua Shechal, but it's here. Tisha B'Av is Sunday. But Al Kaparim Zok Tosfos, so Anu Ein Noyeg, we're not Noyeg like the Gemara. We're not Noyeg to lay Chazoin. And Zok Tosfos, v'zeh haminig lo yishtana la'olam. V'zeh haminig lo yishtana la'olam. So we don't lay in Chazoin. What do we lay? Do we lay in Rosh Chodesh or do we lay in Gimel, the Gimel de Peranius? So Tosfos over there, Fanart says, you lay in Shimu. Shimu is Gimel de Peranius. Zok Tosfos Mefurish Megillah, Shimu. Azoich is in the Rosh, Davud Raham, the Or Zerua, a lot of Rishonim, the Mordechai, all say that you read the Haftorah of Shimu of Gimel de Peranius. Me'idach, Tosfos and Psachim, Daf Memo Med Beis Tosfos, you lay the Haftorah this Shabbos of Rosh Chodesh. Hashamayim Kisi, Machloikis HaTosfos. Tosfos says, you know why you're laying this Shabbos Rosh Chodesh? V'cheinu b'psikta. Frek the Marsha, what do you mean v'cheinu b'psikta? The psikta actually says not like that. But Al Kaponim is like Tosfos. Also the Hagoyas Maiminis that says that the minig is Hashamayim Kisi, the Trumas Hadeshen, Hashamayim Kisi, and he says, you know why Rosh Chodesh? Because it's Tader. Rosh Chodesh is Tader. Either in general Rosh Chodesh is Tader, or Rosh Chodesh Shechalias b'Shabbos is also more tader than Rosh Chodesh Av to be Shabbos. There's yet a third shita, the shita's a Rambam. The Rambam says, like the Gemara, the Rambam says that this Shabbos you lay in Chazoin. I wonder if anybody's knowing the Teimonim Kiminig Rambam. The Rambam says Chazoin. Bebir Amachloikis, we have 3 shitas. Either Rosh Chodesh or Shimu, which is the Kriya of the 3 weeks, or Chazoin. The Maril brings Lakan, and the Maril says the reason why to lay in Shimu, why would you lay in Shimu? It's Rosh Chodesh. The Teretz is in the Haftorah of Rosh Chodesh, these the words Bechatsha Yimtsanuha. The says, and how Rashi explains, it's referring to Rosh Chodesh. So even in the Haftorah of the 3 weeks, it speaks about Rosh Chodesh. So the Mela with Shimu, you could also call it Kasha and have the Rosh Chodesh. It could be Alpidus Maril. Everybody agrees that we want to lay in Rosh Chodesh for the reason of Tadir. The Divrei Malkiel says we want to lay in, you know why we should lay in Rosh Chodesh? Zok the Divrei Malkiel, Shaloi Lazalzel Rosh Chodesh. You can't not lay in on Rosh. If you're not going to lay in Rosh Chodesh, be Mazalzel Rosh Chodesh. Everybody agrees you lay in Rosh Chodesh. Narvas, Rosh Chodesh is Rosh Chodesh. Shimu, the 3 weeks, Zok the Maril is also Rosh Chodesh. And even the Rambam that says Chazoin, the Gemara, it's very interesting. The Rambam lists out every single Haftorah. And then the Rambam says in the 3 weeks, which Haftorah is Yelain, he goes through, and the Rambam says that in the 3 weeks, Chazoin. However, Zok the Rambam, when it's Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh Av, Zok the Rambam, he doesn't call it Chazoin. The Rambam calls it Chodshechem u'Moyadechem. Interesting. The Rambam in the 3 weeks, when he says to read Chazoin, he says Chazoin. But when it's Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Av, Zok the Rambam, you lay in Chodshechem u'Moyadechem, which is Chazoin, also because connected to Rosh Chodesh. Al Kapana, we have over here Machlokes Rishonim. So what's Lamaisa? Machlokes Rishonim.
You have a choice to choose a positive or negative.
So you should go with Rosh Chodesh. So the Emma says it's not clear, and the Ramah in Hilchas Rosh Chodesh already brings, it's not the Machaber, the Ramah, and the Ramah brings that it's a Machlokes, Lakan, either Rosh Chodesh or Shimu, which is the 3 weeks. However, Zok the Ramah, the Iker is Rosh Chodesh. Iker Rosh Chodesh. B'mokum where there's no minig. Whatever we're going to speak about, if your David and Shuli is a minig, there's a minig. B'mokum there's no minig. Zok the Ramah, Rosh Chodesh. Though it's very interesting, because if you take a look in the Darkei Moshe, the Ramah in his Pirush Darkei Moshe actually says Shimu. The Levush says, the Magen Avram, the minig in Posna was Rosh Chodesh. The Aruch HaShulchan says, "V'cheinonu noyagim Rosh Chodesh shekein Iker." Hagoyus Chasam Sofer Rosh Chodesh. The Divrei Yatzav, the Kloisenberger Rebbe, brings a very geschmacke raya from the Chasam Sofer. The Chasam Sofer says a mafurish, but he says if you look in Chasam Sofer al Torah, he says drush on the parsha, and he also says drush on Haftorah. And if you take a look in this week's parsha, he says pshatim on the Haftorah of Shabbos Rosh Chodesh of Hashemayim Kisei Rosh Chodesh. To say the Chasam Sofer, like what he says in Shulchan Aruch and Agoyis, the Haftorah Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Av is Rosh Chodesh. In Siddur Yavitz, he says the Iker is Rosh Chodesh. Shari Ephraim was the safe one. We learned Kriyas HaTorah Rosh Chodesh. Me'idach, who says Shimu, the Gimel de Pranusa, the Bais Yosef, though the Bais Yosef in the Machaber, he doesn't speak about it, but the Bais Yosef himself says to say Shimu, and the reason why to say Shimu is because the Avud Raham, like we mentioned earlier, says Shimu, and Zok the Bais Yosef, the Avud Raham is Baki Bahai in Yonim, V'chein royal ases. We had it in different places. He says it also. The Avud Raham from the Rishonim was a baki. These in Yonim Kriyas HaTorah. Haftorah is able to listen. The El Yerabba, Dogel Mervava, that the minig of Prague was Shimu. In Siddur Yavitz, he says the minig Medinos Elu Shimu. The Chida says Shimu. The Goyin says Shimu, like the Tosas in Megillah. The Tosas in Pesachim. He says the Tosas and Pesachim is a mistake. It's a toyis, like the kushi of the Marsha. It's like the Goyim. So we have over here Lamaisa Machlokes. It's a little hard to narrow it down what the minig is. We spoke about this previously. It's brought in the Poskim and the Ramah and the Taz that something that's not shchiach, you can't say minig. You can't say minig. So even though Taka happened 4 years ago, I don't know if anybody remembers from 4 years ago, But let alone if the next time is 20 years to remember.
They say because people forget. Why do they say you can't say minute?
What'd say?
Why do they say you can't say minute? Because people forget.
People forget, people don't remember. People don't remember. Certain times you even see in the same place they changed. It's not to go in now, but it's not. If you're very organized and you record, say that. Lamaisa, just to go a little bit lakan, the minig to Hashemayim Rosh Chodesh, it's a minig in Satmar and Rachmastrif. Shimu, Chabad, Vishnitz, beyond the Chazanish, minig Chazanish is Shimu, Luach Eretz Yisrael, minig Lakewood. You have lakan. Oh, very good. We're going to get to that mamash in a minute, and with that we're almost going to conclude. It's interesting, the Divrei Yatzav in the Tshuva says, not a pshara, but he says like this: if somebody's noyig Rosh Chodesh, the Shulchan Aruch speaks about Rosh Chodesh. These call it in Yonim. There's no Chiyav Suda, but somebody that's noyig Rosh Chodesh, that it's a Ktsas Yom Tiv, should say the Haftorah of Hashemayim Kisu, and if not, the Gimel de Pranusa. Very good. You asked, why can't you do both? Very good. Why can't you do both? So the what'd say? Why can't you say both? What? So the emes is we don't do two. What we do is a good shaila. This is not the first time where it's negated to do two. What'd say? Two psukim. So the emes is the shaila is already a mafurish shaila. It happens. This shaila happens more than once when it's Erev Shachalis Shabbos. If you have Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos and Sunday, not like this year, this Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos and Sunday. So Shabbos and Sunday have two Haftorahs you can learn. You can learn the Haftorah of Rosh Chodesh, and you can learn the Haftorah of tomorrow of Mocher Chodesh. So which Haftorah do you learn? So the Machaber in Chaf Hey says that when it's Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and Sunday, you do both. You don't do in Ganzen both, two psukim. I don't know if you would do both up here, that Machaber here also, which two psukim of what? Because there you do two psukim of Mocher Chodesh. You do both. Lamaisa, the Ramah says you do not do both, because ein medalgim, you don't go to two different places. So Al Kaponim like the Ramah, if we're noyig like the Ramah all over, so here also we don't do both. Which one is a shaila? Good, that's a shmuz always. And the emes says that even those that Ashkenazim go with the Ramah, there are still those kehilas that actually do say two psukim. It's a shmuz for itself, but it's ain't kama koime about tonight's shmuz of the two Haftorahs, but it's a good shaila. Your shaila is more national shaila, not just for tonight of the two Haftorahs. What we're going to do, what'd say? What, for this week? Moiridik, Rabbi Yosef, very good. He says, Rabbi Yosef says, Taka to do Shimu, but two psukim from Rosh Chodesh. Because I say the Machaber, the Machaber says by every Rosh Chodesh that Shabbos and Sunday, you do two psukim from the other Haftorah. So here also, it's not... Lamaisa is like this. The midig Scheiner is whoever davens from. It's whoever is going to lay. I mean, Lamaisa.
Not twice, for sure. No, not two.
One thing I could say is you'll come to shul and whatever they're going to lane, or if they don't know, you'll be educated al kaponim that these two tzdadim, lakan. What's Lamaisa? I don't know. And hagam lakan. One more pointer, and with this I conclude. If Taka you're going to lane this Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, there are those that were ma'orer that last week, it's too late already, but last week you should have lain two Haftorahs. Sai, the first of Gimel de Pranusa, Parshas Pinchas, and also this week, and you have no problem with two Haftorahs, you're looking at me, two Haftorahs, it's right next to each other, it's one after the other, so you just do both. The etzem, some want tomorrow, you should. Mi'idach, there are those that said no, it's, first of all, it's Apia Magen Avram, But that's really when you if you miss it, begeder tashlumen. We the Morgan Avram is speaking about here. Last week you never missed this week. So va'oid, they say we should be zoiche Mashiach shakam. So last week you should lay 2 Haftorahs to bring on more pranusa. Also we have stamazak dume pranusa lemakdeminon. If Tisha B'Av falls on Shabbos, you don't move it early, you move it later. So push it, kick it down the road. So Al Kaponim Lagabit last week. Some want to say Yeshurov, some say not. We should be zoiche. She born a Beis Hamikdash from here B'Yameinu.